Well, kindergarten, I am very excited about what we're learning about in science this week. We're learning about amphibians. That's a really long word, amphibians, and specifically two types of amphibians that are some of my favorites, frogs and toads. There are so many different types of frogs and toads around the world. We're going to be learning about some really cool ones that live far away, and we're going to be learning about the frogs and toads that live around Austin where we live, ones that you might see outside, okay? I've been going out in the green belt and trying to find a lot of frogs and toads and tadpoles and eggs to show you. So I'll post those videos for you, okay? So let's read some books. This book is called A Tadpole Grows Up. And there's a picture of a tadpole right there. So tadpoles look a lot like fish, but they're not fish. They are, tadpoles either grow up to be frogs or toads. Okay. Tadpoles! Are those fish? No, they're tadpoles. Tadpoles grow into frogs or toads. So there's pictures of some tadpoles, and it says that these tadpoles will grow into toads. Frogs and toads are amphibians. Amphibians live in water and on land. Frogs have smooth skin, and toads have bumpy skin. Sometimes it's hard to tell them apart just by their skin, though, because some toads seem a little bit smooth and some frogs kind of have some bumps on them. So it's hard to tell them apart. But most of the time, frogs have smoother skin, and most of the time, toads have bumpier skin. Okay, but the important thing on this page is that frogs and toads are amphibians. There's that long word. And amphibians are types of animals that live inland and in water, or on land and in water. So are people amphibians? No, we go swimming sometimes, right, for fun, but we don't live in the water sometimes, right? We live on land, so people are not amphibians. But frogs and toads are, because they spend a lot of their time in the water and some time on land, okay? Toads and frogs lay eggs in lakes, ponds, and puddles. Frogs lay eggs in a blob, like this, and toads lay eggs in a string, like this. And like a clear jelly covers the eggs to keep them safe. I'm going to post a video of some toad eggs I found in the creek and some frog eggs I found in the creek, and you can see the difference between them. Other than that, they look almost the same though, except toads lay their eggs in a string, frogs lay their eggs in a big clump, a big blob, and they lay their eggs underwater. Embryos grow inside the eggs. The eggs will hatch in about 2 to 3 weeks. The embryos become tadpoles when they hatch. So look at this. Each little black dot is an embryo inside the egg. Each little black dot is an embryo inside the egg that will turn into a tadpole when it hatches. So look, here's the egg. There's the frog embryo. You can see it has a little tail already. See, these have grown little tails inside their egg. A tadpole looks like a fish. It has a tail, but no legs yet. Its gills help it get air from the water. So tadpoles and fish, even though tadpoles aren't fish, but tadpoles breathe like fish with their gills. We learned when we were learning about our body parts that we breathe with our lungs, right? We each have 2 lungs, and our ribs protect our lungs, and that's how humans breathe. That's how we breathe. That's also how dogs and cats and guinea pigs breathe, with their lungs. But tadpoles breathe air with their gills, just like a fish. And you can kind of see its gill a little bit right there, but they're pretty hard to see. That's how they can breathe underwater, because they have gills. Now, do frogs and toads have gills? No, the cool thing about them is that when they're tadpoles, they have gills so they can breathe underwater, but as they grow into frogs and toads, they lose their gills and they grow lungs so they can breathe air above water. So cool. Tadpoles eat algae. Algae is plants that live in the water. What is happening to this tadpole? It's growing back legs. Its front legs will grow later. Its lungs are growing too. Its lungs will help it breathe air. So first step in a tadpole turning into a frog or toad is it grows back legs. It grows its back legs first. 3 months have passed. The tadpole has lost its tail. It's time to hop out of the water. The tadpole eats bugs and worms now. So tadpoles can grow into toads. See, it has bumpy skin. And tadpoles grow into frogs. It has smooth skin. That one's eating a worm. So here's the life cycle of a tadpole. Number 1, eggs. Number 2, little embryos are growing inside the egg. Number 3, it hatches out of the egg and now it's a tadpole. Number 4, the tadpole eats and eats and eats, and it grows back legs first. Then, after the tadpole grows its back legs, then it grows its front legs. It starts to look more like a frog at this point. And then there's the frog. So it loses its tail, and there's the frog. Okay, let's read another book. This one is From Tadpole to Frog. In the spring, you may see frog eggs in a pond. So there's some frog eggs that are laid in a clump in the water. Each egg looks like a ball of clear jelly with a little dark spot inside. A clump of frog eggs is called frog spawn. Cool. So some animals like to eat frog spawn, like to eat the frog eggs, like maybe snakes or little fish, things like that. Inside the eggs, tiny tadpoles are growing. First, they look very small, like little dark specks. In a few days, a little head and tail will take shape. Soon the tadpoles wiggle out of their egg. Gills on the outside of the tadpole's body help it breathe underwater. Oh, this is a good picture of gills that you can see. That's how fish and tadpoles breathe underwater. We don't have gills, so we can't breathe underwater. After eating the jelly of its egg, the tadpole grows up. The tadpole's strong tail helps it swim. Tadpoles are really, really, really good swimmers. So let's see. This tadpole doesn't have any back legs or front legs yet. It still has its tail. Tadpoles eat until they are big. They don't look like frogs yet, though. Soon the tadpole has grown 2 back legs, and the tadpole's gills have moved inside its body. So now it's growing its lungs. So it grew its back legs, so the front legs will be next. Lungs are beginning to form inside the tadpole's body. Now and then it puts its head above the water to take a breath. So there's its back legs right there. As the tadpole's lungs grow stronger, its gills begin to shrink away. Now 2 front legs grow where its gills were. Wow, so now it has front legs. Look, its head is starting to look more like a frog. Soon the tadpole's mouth has become wider. The tadpole starts to eat small bugs now when it's hungry. So now it kind of looks like a frog, but it still has its tail, right? So it's not a full frog yet. We call these froglets that are kind of like half tadpole, half frog. They're froglets. All this frog has to do now is its tail will disappear, and then it'll be a frog. For a few more weeks, the tadpole's tail shrinks. Now the tadpole's strong legs and webbed feet help it swim. The tadpole has changed into a small frog. The frog spends some of its time on land and some of its time in water. So we know it's an amphibian. That's the definition of an amphibian, an animal that spends some time on land and some time on water. And that looks like a leopard frog to me. So we're going to learn about different types of frogs this week, and leopard frogs live around Austin where we do. Okay? All right, so I'm going to show you this. This is some little figurines of a life cycle of a frog. We would have this in our science center usually. So this is they're made out of like plastic or rubber, but these are the frog eggs. Now, we know that a toad doesn't lay eggs like this, right? Toads lay their eggs in a string. So this must be a frog, right? Because it's a clump. It's a big blob. Then a little tadpole hatches out of each egg. So tadpoles, they have 2 eyes in the front. There's their mouth. And they don't have any arms or legs at the beginning. They have a long tail. Then it'll grow back legs. And then it'll grow front legs. But it still has its tail. It still lives underwater. Then its tail will shrink away. And it's a frog. Okay? So now it has lungs inside its body and it breathes air. Frogs and toads are both amphibians. They both live on land and in water. Okay, so for the rest of science, there is a frog and toad life cycle I want you to color in. And then I'm going to post some frog and toad videos for you to watch. And then I'm going to post some frog and toad videos that I took in the Greenbelt. So you'll hear my voice talking. And it's about some frog eggs and toad eggs I found. And then I also found some toad tadpoles and frog tadpoles, okay? All right, that's it for science today. So maybe you can color in the life cycle sheet while you're watching the videos.